On today's Locked On Giants podcast, Coach Clemons joins the show with some scouting reports on the Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl prospects. That's coming your way next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our promo code in all lowercase letters, LockedOnNFL, to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50. Prize Picks, run your game. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all our written work, that of myself and of my team members, as well as our podcasts over there. And speaking of which, we have one of our podcasters and writers with us today. You guys know him and love him. Coach Clemons making his long overdue, and this is my fault, by the way, it's his long overdue return to the Locked On Giants podcast as a guest spot. Coach Gene is the host of the growing A Giant Issue podcast. It's over on the New York Giants on SI channel, YouTube channel, which is where you can find it, as well as over on New York Giants on SI. Coach Gene, good to see you, my friend.
Hey, good to see you as well, PT. And yeah, don't beat her up too bad because she hasn't had me on in a while. I understand. I can be a lot. I talk a lot. It's okay.
It's all good. No, it's all good. It's fine. It's just, things happen, man. And look, this has been
true.
bad season. I mean, it's just taken a lot out of everybody associated with the Giants, everybody who's covered the Giants. I tell people all the time, covering a losing team is not easy, and it just takes a lot out of you. It really does.
Yeah, it's funny. When we were here last year, this particular point, like we were like, well, it can't really get much worse, and then it got much worse. It got much worse. So
yes,
hopefully we are on the upswing, because it really can't get much worse than what it was this past season. Hopefully everything is swinging up from here, but unfortunately, we got to watch Saquon Barkley have arguably the greatest running back season in the history of the game, and watch that unfold before our eyes in the Super Bowl. So, not quite over it just yet, but we're almost there.
Not soon enough, my friend. And by the way, good for Saquon Barkley. I'm not going to lie, I'm happy for him. I really am. I don't particularly care that the Eagles and the Chiefs are in this Super Bowl again. I'm just, my interest level is zero, but good for Saquon. And I hope Saquon does really well because he's a good dude. So anyway, Giant fan, we are here to talk not about the past. We are here to talk about the future. So right now, as we record this, the Shrine Bowl practices are going on. The Senior Bowl practices are about to get started. Coach Gene, a talent evaluator, has been doing his thing. He's been checking out, the practices that have been airing. And he's got some thoughts about some of the prospects that are in the Shrine Bowl as well as in the Senior Bowl. And Coach Gene, we've got to start with the obvious spot, and that is at quarterback. Now, right now, depending on who you talk to, some people will say Shedeur Sanders is the top dog and there's no, that's it. Some people will say it's Cam Ward of Miami. Some people will say that neither of them is really the top dog. I want to get where you stand on this evaluation.
Well, if you remember last year, this time I was touting Shedeur Sanders. I said that I thought Shedeur Sanders would be one of the top quarterbacks if he came out in last year's class. And a lot of people were like, oh, well, it doesn't make any sense for him to come out. There's a lot of talented quarterbacks. He's not going to be the first overall guy. He might as well come back, improve his stock, and be guaranteed to be the first quarterback taken next year. Well, he came back. He lit the country on fire, And now all of a sudden people are saying, well, I don't know if he's that good. I think a lot of it is, who his father is. And for some reason, this bias or this negativity towards the way in which they go about like presenting themselves. But I'll say this much: as a quarterback, Shedeur Sanders is the most pro-ready quarterback to come out in well over a decade, maybe even two, and I don't even think it's close. I'll tell you why briefly. When I look at what the quarterback is asked to do, nobody has been able to navigate those waters better than Shedeur Sanders has been able to navigate those waters. Not only is he the face of his team, not only does he have to do everything because he doesn't have a running game, not only does he have to do that behind what can only be subscribed as a former New York Giants-esque type of offensive line, but then he also is charismatic enough to make you forget about all that stuff and just focus in on him and his play. You don't notice the fact that there's not an elite level running back behind him to hand the ball off to. You don't notice that there's not an elite offensive line in front blocking for him. You don't even notice that he does not have, outside of Travis Hunter, an elite level weapon that is going to go on day one of the NFL draft. People, I give him my comparison to Joe Burrow, and people say, well, that's crazy. And I said, well, ask Joe Burrow to play with this team that he just played with and let him play with Joe Burrow's team that had first round picks all over the place, future all pros and pro bowlers all over the place on offense and defense, and see what he would have done with that type of weaponry. So when you look at that and you look at all of the pressure that he's been under from the moment he was a little kid playing middle school to high school, four state championships in a row, to college level where he had back-to-back SWAC championships, then took over the worst Division I program at the FBS level in Colorado and turned it into a 9-win season in 2 years. You're not talking about some 24-year-old. You're talking about a legitimate 22-year-old quarterback who spent 4 years in college that is now coming out and is ready to deal with all of the rigors. All of the reports that we've gotten out of the Shrine Bowl about Shedeur Sanders is about how easy he is to get along with, how poised he is, how commanding he is, how his presence just brings people around, how he has an energy about him that's infectious. You want to know why those guys in Colorado played so hard for him? Is because he did that exact same thing for them every single day. That's why I think he's one of the most pro-ready guys that we've seen come out in the past decade.
All right. That said, Gene, which of the quarterbacks, based on the offense that the Giants run, is the best fit?
I mean, if you wanna say the best fit, I think that Cam Ward, just off of the way in which he gets it done, might be a better fit. But I think they're a fit in two different ways. If you're going off of the offense that we've seen, where you want the quarterback to be able to like make accurate throws where guys can get the ball on the run and be able to go, like Shedeur's the most accurate quarterback in the country. If you want a guy who has a little bit more of that cannon arm that can put it deep and has really good placement on a deep ball, then that's probably Cam Ward. Cam Ward's athletic. Shedeur Sanders isn't like uber athletic, but he's not like a statue in the back either. He can move around. He can pick up some yards. So I think it really just comes down to like what type of offense do we want to see from the Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll like conglomerate. If you're talking about the 2022 offense, I would say Cam Ward is a better fit. If you're talking about what they were trying to do in 23 and this past season, I would say Shedeur Sanders is a better fit. But it all depends on what type of offense they're trying to run.
That said, Gene, if for some reason Sanders and Ward are off the board in the first round, who are some of the quarterback prospects maybe at the end of the first round, maybe day 2, that you think might be a good fit and who have caught your eye?
Two guys that I think are day 2 prospects that have day 1 upside to them, and that's Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart is the guy, if you're looking for the guy who has so much tape out there of him playing in an offense, has command of that one offense that he's played in for 3 years, has an ability to show you that he can maneuver and manipulate that offense at a high level. That's Jackson Dart. If you're looking for the Josh Allen-esque measurables, the big arm, the athleticism, the physicality, that's Jalen Milroe. It's going to come with a little bit rawer package. He's been in a few different offenses in his time at Alabama because of the coaching change and how often their offensive coordinators get snatched up by other people. So he's been in a few different machinations of the same offense, if you will. But he is the traits, the upside type of guy. The probably ready-made come in and play. He is who he's going to be right now. That's probably Jackson Dart. I think those two guys being at the Senior Bowl is going to give Giants fans a great opportunity to see both of those guys perform at the same time and kind of make a judgment on their own on which guy they believe could fit better in this offense if for some reason they don't go with Shedeur Sanders or with Cam Ward with that first pick.
All right, we're speaking with Coach Gene Clemons of New York Giants on SI, host of a Giant Issue podcast, which you can find on New York Giants on SI. And Coach Gene, let's kind of did a lot of talking about the quarterbacks. I want to talk about the Giants offense as it is currently constructive. Now, you were very vocal last year about Saquon Barkley and the importance of him in this offense. Barkley, of course, left. Tyrone Tracy came on board. Not a bad rookie year, I would say, for Tyrone Tracy. Not quite Saquon Barkley-like, but promising nonetheless. But as you look at this Giants offense, the way it is currently constructed, and quarterback aside, do you feel good about how it is constructed, or is it missing something still?
Well, I feel good about the additions that they made. I've been on record as saying that I had to give Jermaine Illuminor his flowers for the job that he did, being able to solidify that right tackle position, be more consistent on the right side, to be able to go over to the left side. I still have questions about why they actually needed to do that when they had Evan Neal, who's a natural left tackle that they put over at right tackle that they could have put back there, but who knows, right? I applaud the fact that he has that position flexibility, that they brought him in to play guard. They ended up playing him at right tackle, and then he went over and had significant snaps at left tackle and did a great job. That, to me, is a game changer for this offensive line, to have that level of flexibility. And then watching how the interior has shaped up, right? I think a guy like Jake Kubis coming off the bench showed that he can be a legitimate guard in this league. And we know that North Dakota State and South Dakota State, both of those teams produce really good interior offensive linemen all the time. So not surprising that he's able to come in. I think Van Roten being able to be a guard or a center as a spell guy for JMS is great, because JMS, to me, didn't take the step that I would have liked to have seen him take this year, but he did get better. And so, you're just hoping that another year allows him to get a little bit better and solidify what they're doing inside. For me, the biggest question on the offense becomes, how do you solidify the offensive line? And to me, it is, what do we do with Evan Neal to get the most out of his skill set? And to me, it's simple. You have to move him to guard, because you're not going to take Jermaine Illuminor and move him off right tackle. You already have a left tackle in place. There's some questions inside, and you've got a 6'9" behemoth who's super athletic and collapses the line whenever he blocks down on people. It just seems natural to me that you would want to put that guy at a guard and just allow him to rock, especially after watching Mekhi Becton go over to Philadelphia with zero guard experience and become a Pro Bowl caliber guard over there in Philly. You have to be salivating going, Evan Neal has guard experience. We know he can move. We know what he can do in the run game. Allow him to be more comfortable, more free at guard and move him down there. I think that would change everything on the offensive line that is already improved from what it was 2 years ago.
Hey, Giant fans, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where one of the starting quarterbacks only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one or more correct picks, and you're cashing out. So go on, check out the promos tabs to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners' big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL in all lowercase letters to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Gene, now let's talk about the defense because I got to admit, I was a little surprised the Giants are running it back with Shane Bowen. I questioned whether Bowen's philosophies were a fit for the personnel, and apparently they feel that he's going to be fine, just got to get him some more help on the line. But I want to get your take starting there. And do you think the philosophies that Shane Bowen runs is really a good fit for this Giants team?
I think the problem for me, and I've said this on the podcast, the problem for me is at the NFL level where you're dealing with the best of the best. If your defensive or offensive coordinator cannot transform a defense to fit the personnel that are on the team, then are they really a good defensive or offensive coordinator? Like, I just don't understand how you can tell me I have 3 guys who have the ability to be like quality edge rushers. I can't find a way to get all 3 of them on the field at the same time. I have a monster inside at nose, but the guy next to him isn't always the greatest. They don't really rush the passer well, yet I keep leaving them in there on pass rushing situations, expecting things to change. It doesn't make any sense to me. You can't tell me, hey, I have all of these guys who are long and athletic and used to playing man coverage, but I'm going to stick them in off man, or I'm going to stick them in zone and not allow them to utilize the gifts that they have. It's not surprising to me that Deonte Banks had his best year as a rookie in a defense that was an attacking style defense that allowed him to play more physical at the line of scrimmage play. And now he's struggling in a more passive, like bend but don't break on the back end type of defense that doesn't really fit his skill set that well. Like, what are we doing with all of these safeties that we have on the roster if we're going to turn around and need to draft more safeties? I don't particularly understand this, especially when you consider the talented safeties that this Giants team has let go. So I didn't like the move to bring him back. I was on board at the beginning of the year. I said, hey, it seems as if he's doing something a little bit different. The defense is responding. And then when teams started making the adjustment, there was no counterpunch. There was nothing to switch to. He just kept trying to do the same thing, even though it wasn't working. I think it's a bad marriage. And I thought that the best job would have been to cut ties right now, but instead we're running it back. So now does that mean that the team has to go out and get players specific to his scheme? And when it doesn't work for his scheme and he's out of there, or the entire regime is out of there, now you have players that are in a defense that don't fit whatever the next person is trying to come in and do. It doesn't seem to be like a recipe for sustained success for me. It just seems like people trying to protect their jobs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't understand a lot of stuff, especially, late season adjustments where after week, we would see the same thing and then suddenly the light went on. So, that being said, Gene, I suspect strongly that the Giants are going to give a lot of attention to that defense. All right. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't really do that last year once they acquired Brian Burns. That was their big splash on defense. Who are some of these young players at defensive line, maybe at cornerback? I don't know, maybe there's an edge rusher or an inside linebacker. Who are some of these young guys that, whether they're in the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl, that have caught your eye?
There's a few guys out there, but I'll say this. I think what you'll first see them do is try to get a young but not overly priced defensive player in free agency. I expect to see them make a move at corner somewhere to bring in a veteran corner. Not exactly sure who, once we see how the market kind of plays itself out, but I think that they'll be in the market there. I think you may see them try to go defensive line in the draft because this defensive draft has a lot of interior defensive linemen that I think are stellar. And I think the Giants will try to get their hands on one of those guys in maybe the second, third, and even fourth rounds.
Yeah, that's a deep class, that defensive front, which is obviously an area where the Giants have struggled, basically in the trenches, offense and defense. The Giants, for whatever reason, under Joe Shane, building from the outside in instead of from the inside out, which makes absolutely no sense to me, but that's how they have chosen to do it. So, that being said, I want to ask you about a guy who has kind of now been a lightning rod that has split the opinion of the Giant fans, and that's Kavon Tibido. Some fans are already writing him off towards Bustville. Some fans are like, still wait and see. When you go back and you look at Kayvon's game, and I know he had the broken wrist, he missed 5 games or something like that. So that, cut into his production. But has Kayvon taken the step forward that we need to see, or did things kind of slow down for him a little bit?
I don't think he took the massive leap forward that we thought he would take this year, but obviously there are factors in there. And before I say that, because I remember now that you wanted me to give you some names, I wanted to just give you a couple names to look at. Tyler Batty, the defensive end out of BYU, he is a D end, 3 technique type of hybrid, 6'5", 275. I think he's a guy who could really fit into this defense where they want to really try to get pressure with 4, where he can drop down and be that 3 technique when you have that other linebacker coming off the edge with Thibodeau and Oraziz and Brian Burns. I think he's a name to look at. I think Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle, he was the guy playing next to the all-world guy. He's all-world too, 6'4", 360, big, physical, strong, who can allow Lawrence to have a little bit more position flexibility in this defense. You and I both love when they just leave Dex as a nose, right? But that doesn't seem to be the way it's going to have to work in this defense. So he may have to have a little bit more flexibility. They might want to put him next to another bigger body guy to go there. And then there's a defensive tackle out of Texas A&M, a couple of those guys, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scotton, Nick Scotton. Both of guys are big, athletic, physical guys who can, combine with another dude inside to really give you another tandem that they've missed since they let Leonard Williams go via trade. So those are some names of defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, I think that could work for the Giants. As far as what Kayvon has done or what he hasn't done, I think the problem that exists is that we look at sacks as the end all to be all. And if players aren't getting sacks, then they're not good. And anybody on the inside will tell you that sacks, it's a volatile metric because the sack is predicated on so many other things that don't have anything to do with the player. I've watched as the Giants have run certain plays that don't block a defensive end at all. the defensive end doesn't bite on the play action or doesn't do their job, which is to squeeze the offensive line down, and now they're in the backfield for a free sack, does that mean that they're really good at getting sacks, or are they just lucky, right? So I think with Kavon Tibido, last year you saw him get into the double digits in sacks, and then everyone just said, well, that should be where he is. Meanwhile, they got Brian Burns, and Brian Burns has never consistently been a double-digit sack guy. So it's like, wait a minute, you're saying you're in love with Brian Burns, who isn't a consistent double-digit sack guy, but you're not in love with Kavon Tibido. Why? Because he talks? I guess so. But to me, I don't care what these players say off the field. I only care what they do on the field. And you can't name me a time that you're looking at Kavon Tibido play football and go, he's loafing, he's dogging it, he ain't really putting out max effort. Every time he's out there, he is going as hard as he can. He's improved in the run game. He's improved in the run game mightily. And now, once that run game becomes prevalent, and the Giants can start getting people to pass the ball more, that can open up more opportunities for sacks. But you have to remember, if you start to bring all of these different talents on the field, and you've got Dexter Lawrence, who can get sacks from the middle, and you've got Brian Burns, who can get sacks from the left side, and you've got Tibido, who can get sacks from the right side, and you've got Azeez, who can come in and get sacks, and you bring in another guy who can get sacks. They all can't get 20 sacks, ladies and gentlemen. So you're going to have to be okay with a 7 or 8 over here, and an 8 to 10 over there, and a 7 to 5 over here, and a 10 to 11 over there. And that number might jump from season to season to season. But if they're consistently making plays, getting tackles in the backfield, that's what people should be concerned with. And that's what Kavon Tibido has been doing. He's been manning up, especially against the run. Is he perfect? No. But who is, right? And on top of that, less and less of him dropping in coverage, because I still see times where they're dropping this man in coverage, and I'm like, what are you doing? Just let that dude go and play on the line of scrimmage.
This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. If you are waiting and wondering and worrying if you are going to get any money back on your taxes this year, worry no more. Get matched with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. Your TurboTax expert will give your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. Your expert will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. No more waiting, no more wondering, no more worries. That's how taxes are supposed to be. So go on and get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Hey, Giant fans, if you're looking to join an exclusive community of Big Blue Faithful where you can discuss the team and receive inside information in a toxic-free environment, then you need to check out the Locked On Giants Blue Crew community. Members get access to our exclusive by invitation only Discord channel where we can talk with one another, ask questions, get breaking news, and so much more. Plus, as part of the Locked On Giants Blue Crew, I text exclusive updates and info directly to your phone, and you can communicate with me via text one-on-one. So come see what it's all about with a free 14-day trial. And when you use our promo code BLUECREW, you will get your first 2 months after your free 14-day trial at 50% off the regular monthly price of $4.99 per month. If you don't like the service, cancel it before your trial ends, and you'll owe absolutely nothing. For more information or to register, visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNYGiants. And don't forget to enter that promo code BLUECREW, BLUECREW, at the top of the page for your 2-month discount after your 14-day trial expires. Text and data rates may apply. Please see your carrier's plan for details. Gene, I want to double back to quarterback for a second because I forgot to ask you about the veteran bridge. This team will probably bring in a veteran bridge. There's been different names thrown out there: Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Some reports have said, oh, maybe they trade for Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr. Who do you like as the ideal veteran bridge, assuming they can get him?
Well, I think that if you're planning to bring a veteran bridge in, you have to bring a veteran bridge in that you're comfortable with as a starter. That's the number one thing. You have to be comfortable with them as a starter because they play well enough as the bridge guy. Then you should be okay with saying, no, we're going to let whomever this quarterback that we brought in have a red shirt year, very similar to a Patrick Mahomes, and then we'll hand it over to him after the season's over with. And to me, a guy like Justin Fields has the level of hunger that you want. He's young enough to where he might even still be your quarterback if for some reason they don't go with the a quarterback with their top pick, if they don't get one, or if they decide to go a different way, and you bring in one of these quarterbacks in the second or third round, and you bring a Justin Fields in. Well, Justin Fields, 24 years old. So he's still got all of his life in front of him. If he can come there and get an opportunity, a legitimate opportunity to play out a string of games and show you what he can be, because I think a lot of people are starting to understand your quarterback doesn't have to be a 4,500 yard per season thrower in order to win championships. Your quarterback just has to be a playmaker. And I think Justin Fields is a playmaker. So if he gets the opportunity to be there, that's the guy I would do it. I think you could get him at a very team-friendly deal, where he's not going to be expecting to get $30 million a year, $40 million a year. You could put something together, maybe a 2-year deal in the $40 million range, with most of it front loaded to that first year, so that it's easy to get from up underneath in the year number 2, or just so you have them at a discount on year number 2, and get that thing done that way. Because whomever you bring in, they're going to be somebody that has an ability to run the ball as well, just maybe not as good as Justin Fields. So you don't have to dial up a completely different offense in order to put him in there as opposed to somebody else.
All right, now final question for you. The Giants have a lot of needs. I think we can both agree with that, not just in terms of player personnel, but some coaching decisions, such as who's going to call the plays, what kind of adjustments Shane Bowen's going to make. Let me get from you the needs that they absolutely positively have to get straightened this offseason, because they can't solve every problem. There's going to have to be a pecking order. How would you stack the needs or the decisions that have to be made in terms of, if they don't get this right, we're going to have another long season?
Well, I think the good thing is that they've given themselves an opportunity to have starting offensive line continuity. So they can bring back this same unit next year. A healthy Andrew Thomas on the left side, and then Illuminor, Van Roten on the right if they decide to bring Van Roten back, because I know he was on a short deal. You've got JMS at center, and you've got the left guard, who his name just always pops out of my head for some
Van
reason.
Roten?
Not Van Roten,
No,
left guard.
Runyon.
Yeah,
Runyon,
sorry, John Runyon Jr. My apologies, John Runyon. Great season, by the way. You got Runyon on the left side. So now that you're solidified with your starters, the interesting part to me is being able to just kick Neal inside as a guard. Now bring Van Roten as your ultimate backup, center guard guy with Kubis, and then go out and either draft or bring in a swing left tackle or a swing right tackle, somebody that can be on both sides, and now you've got the continuity of the offensive line there. So I think that's the best thing about what they have going on right now. But I think as far as needs, defensive line, you've got to get an interior defensive lineman. No disrespect to Nacho or any of those guys, but you just have to upgrade at that position, get more athletic. I think you have to bring in a cornerback, somebody who has the confidence and the swagger to be able to go out there and play in whatever environment's necessary to play in order to get the job done. We've got to find a way to keep from giving up the giant plays, because I do think there's talent, right? I think that there's talent at cornerback that just needs to be cultivated. That's why they fired the defensive back coach, apparently, and that's why they've got a new guy coming in. Let's see him do his job there. But bring in a cornerback to solidify one of those sides while those young guys continue to grow. I think that's priority number one. Priority number two. Priority number three can't be safety, because you've invested so much draft capital and things and safeties that I think you just have to rock with the guys that you have there. Pinnock's there, Nubin's there, or Pinnock. I think Pinnock may be
Pinnock's going to be a UFA.
Yes. So to me, bring Pinnock back, because Pinnock's in the system. He understands. He's been here. At some point, you got to start signing the people who have invested a lot of time in your program, right? You can't just keep letting every safety go to the ether and go start somewhere else. Bring Pinnock back. Hopefully he doesn't break the bank on you or anything like that, but bring him back. Tyler Nubin's there. You've got your backup guys that are still in place. You have to make it work there. You got to figure out what's going on in the interior at linebacker. If it's a reclamation and getting Bobby Okereke back to the Okereke that we saw in 2023, or it's get someone else in there. But I think you just need to find a dude, because for as much as Micah McFadden has done, he is tapped out. This is the best that he's going to be. He's not getting any better than this. We've seen this exact same Micah McFadden for 3 years now. He's not getting any better. He's still going to miss tackles. He's still going to take the wrong read steps. He's still going to get swallowed up by a big offensive lineman. You need to get another dude in there so that dude is your backup and not your starter. I think that's the way it should go. D-line, cornerbacks, linebacker, and then come back over to the offensive side and figure out who's going to be opposite of Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. I can't believe they didn't trade away Slayton only to allow him to walk away in free agency. That makes no sense to me. So if that's the case, then that's just another X on the mark of this front office to not trade him away and get something for him when they could have. So if he's coming back, then cool. I wouldn't mind running it back with this receiving core. I don't think the receiving core is that bad. I don't want to see Wan'Dale Robinson get another 90-plus receptions and 600 yards. That's ridiculous. Give 30 of those to Slayton, and he'll have 1,000, because that's how good he's been over his career. But I think you got to figure out who's going to be the guy opposite of Malik Neighbors on that side. And it's interesting because if they don't go quarterback, to me, you have to go with Travis Hunter, because now Travis Hunter solves two problems. And to me, that's the beautiful thing. That's what nobody's talking about. If they're like, well, is Travis Hunter better than this cornerback? I don't know. Is Travis Hunter better than this wide receiver? I don't know. Can any one of them play the other position? The answer is no. But we know Travis Hunter can play cornerback, and we know Travis Hunter can play wide receiver. So now if you bring him in as your starting cornerback, and then as your number 2/3 receiver, where he's getting roughly 40 to 50% of the snaps on offense and all the snaps on defense, he's going to have less snaps than he was getting in college. So like he'll be a little more protected that way. But now you have a dynamic weapon on the offensive side and a dynamic weapon on the defensive side, and you got it out of one person.
All right, there was one more question I have to ask you, and then I promise I'll let you go, because you keep raising points, and I'm like, okay, I got to ask about this. Brian Dable last year took over the play calling. There's been some dispute as to whether that was the right move or not the right move. Based on what you saw, would you be okay if they ran it back with him as the play caller, or do you think they need to change that? And let me just, before you answer, from my perspective, I thought the defense and special teams suffered a little bit more because Dable was just so involved with the offensive side of the ball. I personally would like to see him go back to be more of the CEO style head coach, but let me get your perspective on that.
Because you're bringing in a new quarterback, it's not going to matter, right? Whether he's the play caller or there's another play caller. Here's the thing I will say though. At this point, I need to see him go down swinging. Either you're going to be the reason to get this offense humming or go down swinging. I don't ever want to see another situation where he gives the play calling duties over and then we hear, oh, well, he's going to take over the play calling duties now. No. You've done that already. You've made the bed, now lie in it. I don't think that the offense suffered from bad play calling last year. I think the offense suffered from bad execution, right? It was just bad execution in some of these things. Obviously, he was doing something right. The running game got going at a level that nobody thought the running game would get going at. They were able to make Malik Neighbors one of the best wide receivers in the league in year one, just off targets. They were able to give a slot receiver gadget dude 90 plus targets, 90 plus receptions, and God knows how many targets. If he can figure that out, then I think he can figure out as a play caller how to get the mojo working even better. And it's something to be said about continuity on the play calling on back-to-back seasons. But because it's going to be a new quarterback, that won't be as big a deal. Whomever is coming in is going to get a fresh voice, regardless of whether that's Dable or whomever else.
Good point. That's something I hadn't thought about, but that's a very good point. I mean, you would think you'd want the consistency in the voice in the quarterback's ear, but like you said, new quarterbacks coming in, whether it's a bridge, whether it's a young guy, just, doesn't matter at that point. It's just do what's going to fit this guy. I mean, just real quick, what did you think of the job Dable did as a play caller? I mean, because sometimes there were things he did. I was like, what exactly are you doing? And then there were times when I thought, oh, wow. Pretty cool.
Yeah, there were some elements that just were missed. Like he was dialing up some things. I think that is part of the frustration that he felt. He probably was like, "Oh, Mike Kafka, you're not dialing up certain things." And in Kafka's mind, he was probably thinking, "No, I'm dialing them up. Just they're not being executed." And sometimes you don't see that until you step into the chair. And now you have to deal with it. He probably stepped into the chair and went, oh, this is probably what Mike was dealing with. The fact that he was calling things and it wasn't being executed to the level where it looked like it should be executed. There was times where I was watching them throw a hitch route and there'd be an over route wide open. They're throwing a hitch route and there's a dig wide open. They're throwing a out route and there's a fade ball, a hole shot wide open that's there to be taken. The OC, whoever's calling the plays, they cannot make you throw the ball where they want you to throw the ball. They can only make suggestions. Because the moment we try to go, hey, throw the ball here, that's when they throw the ball there and there's a defensive back standing in the way, right? So you got to give that quarterback the autonomy to read it to a certain level and make those decisions. But I think for Dable, he just looked at it and went, man, I know that what I'm calling is right. When I go back and I self-assess after the game, when we're looking at it and I'm saying, Hope, this is what I called, this is what I should have called. There was probably times where he went, I could have called something different there. But I bet there was an overwhelming amount of times where he went, no, this was it. We had this. We just didn't get it done. We either didn't block it well enough, we didn't throw the ball well enough, or we didn't catch the ball, which was an issue the entire season. So I think if you clean those things up, he comes back as a play caller. I don't have a problem with it. But if he gave the play calling up, I wouldn't have a problem with it either. I just don't want to see him take it back. So if he gives it up, that's the last time I want to see him as a play caller with the New York Giants, unless for some reason his offensive coordinator gets a job and leaves, and then he's left to then decipher whether or not to call plays or hire another guy to be a play caller.
Makes sense. I mean, definitely this back and forth and You know,
Yeah.
and it'll be interesting to see if, Brian's a very proud man, and, will his ego allow him to give it up, or, what exactly is he going to do? Right now, everything's on the table, obviously. And, the pressure's on, because if he and Joe Shane don't get this turned around, come this time next year, we're probably going to be talking about the new coaching staff that's coming in. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to have to go there every other year. I just don't.
I was surprised we weren't going there already this year. So, like, the fact that we're not there this year I think, is a level-headed somebody saying, let's just give it one more shot, right?
Right.
But in reality, nobody would have been mad if they decided to move on from both head coach and GM at this time.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Hopefully they can turn it around. I mean, remember when Tom Coughlin was here initially, there was talk of getting rid of him after so many years, and he turned it around. So maybe
Yeah,
history repeats itself.
I remember Fossil being on the
Yep.
hot seat, and they were about to kick him to the curb. He put all the chips in the middle. I remember all the chips in, and I was like,
Yep.
"Oh wow, that really worked." Like,
Yeah.
I don't
And
think
he
that
did it with
ever
a
really
Kerry
worked.
Collins versus an Eli Manning too, which is
Yeah,
why I say maybe history will repeat itself. I hope.
yeah. You
Fingers
never
crossed,
know.
right?
I always tell people you're always closer than you think you are, right? And
I hope you're right.
to what that becomes the question. Like, closer to relevancy, yes. Like, championships, you see what you have to be in order to win a championship right now. There's just not a lot of teams that are there. And it's really difficult to get there, right? But to being relevant, to being a player, to being existent in the postseason, it's not that far away. It's a play here and a play there, and get lucky and don't get your left tackle, hurt for the season. Maybe one of these times that would help, right? Like, that's all that's necessary in order to move this thing forward. If you're speaking about it positively, which everyone should right now, there's nowhere else to go. We're at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed that it starts to move up. But anyway, Coach Gene, always appreciate your insight. And certainly now that it's roster building season, we'll have you on again. I promise we won't go long stretches. But folks, do check him out. He's got his own podcast over on New York Giants on SI. It's called A Giant Issue. And he tells it straight. He gives it to you straight. There's no BSing. He gives it to you straight. So check that out. Also, you can check out his work on New York Giants on SI. Right now, we're doing Senior Bowl recaps, or we will be doing Senior Bowl recaps. We're doing Shrine Bowl recaps, and Coach Jeans has been giving you his picks, guys who have stood out. So do check that out. Giant fans, I want to thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And be sure to keep it here all week long as we bring you more updates, more guests, and whatnot from the Senior Bowl, from the Shrine Bowls. We cover the future of the Giants, which hopefully is very bright. So for Coach Gene Clemons, I'm Patricia Traina. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow, Giant fans.